The board of directors. I'll start over again. Sorry. I'm going to call the order this meeting of the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council's Board of Directors. My name is Mike Riley. I'm the board chair. Thanks for being here tonight, everybody. And those folks online, including Commissioner Taylor from Jefferson County and Cheryl Lowerin from the city of Sister. They'll see us with us as well. I'm not sure where that is, but I imagine help for information shortly. Let's start off with introductions real quick.
Kimberly Banner, Executive Coordinator for COIC. Tammy Viney, Executive Director.
Mike Riley, I'm the Bend City Councilor and the Chair of the Board.
Tim DeBoot, representing Ag and Forestry, Cook County.
John Nielsen, Reverend City Council.
Susie Hummer, Crook County Commissioner.
David Beck, City of Calhoun Council.
Mark Sumner, President of the City Council.
Christy Abbey, Councilor City of Employees.
Matt Erdl, Deschutes County, representing unemployed and underemployed.
Great. Then do you want to go back through the whole year?
Yeah.
Tom Bonington.
Bethany Alstead, Director for JLG Youth Services. Michelle Williams, COIC Deputy Director for School Youth.
I'm going to step in here. I'm Bob Townsend, East Transit Director, and I'm excited to, and I'll let Andrea introduce herself too, but introduce Andrea, our new Outreach and Engagement Administrator. We're taking a different approach with this position. This was Derek's old position before he moved on to the city of Bend. Thank you. But our focus is really going to be on marketing. Andrea has over 20 years in marketing, so we're taking a different approach to increasing ridership and raising awareness. So super excited to have her on board. About 2 weeks now.
Yes. Thank you.
Rhonda Connor, COIC Human Resources.
Hannah Bullock, Senior University Director for COIC. Aaron Sullivan, HR Generalist for COIC.
Tony DeBoe, Deschutes County Commissioner. Patrick Service, COSC 1 Officer.
Jen Perley at COIC Adult Employment and Health Work.
Dana Dunlap, Adult Education and Training Officer.
Great. So the first thing we're going to do, that we always do on our agenda is have a service story and have Jennifer Profili, did I say that right? Profili. With adult, as an adult employment counselor, so come on. Jennifer. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Jenny Perfili, an adult employment and training counselor with COIC under the Dana Dunlap's team. So tonight my service story is a reentry participant. And so we've been doing the reentry program at Deer Ridge Correctional Institution in Madras for three years now. We go in prior to and work with the returning citizens about 3 months before they release. And you'll kind of hear in service stories some of our services that we offer and provide out on site at Deer Ridge, as well as we continue those services when they release and continue to work with them until they are employed. So in July, I met Jeremy through the Roads to Success program at Deer Ridge Correctional Institution, which is also VRCI. This program, coordinated by the Oregon Department of Corrections, provides adults in custody who will be releasing within 90 days with transition-focused classes, including employment, and connects them with COIC and workforce staff for continuity of career services and reentry support as our staff is on site at Deer Ridge 2 days per week. I actually just came from there today. So I came straight from prison. They did let me out. During our initial meetings with Jeremy, we developed an individual employment plan tailored to Jeremy's goals. Together, we worked on building a professional resume, conducting mock interviews, and engaging in weekly career planning and job search activities. Jeremy expressed a strong interest in returning to the welding field, although it had been more than 15 years since he last held a certification or related work experience. In August, COIC and Worksource staff hosted an on-site career fair at DRCI where Basic Solutions participated as an employer. Jeremy took the initiative to introduce himself to the Basics recruiter and presented his resume that we helped prepare. And he made a pretty good, strong first impression, and they did tell him to contact them when he released. So after his release, we met with him early in October, actually, not very long ago. And Jeremy followed up with our team at WorkSource to review his plan, address employment barriers. And although he had access to a vehicle, his driver's license had lapsed. So through a referral to the STEP program, which is the SNAP Training and Employment Program through WorkSource, Jeremy was provided support service for the DMV fees needed to reinstate his Oregon driver's license, removing a major transportation barrier. Shortly after, Jeremy officially applied for a welder helper position at Basics. And our staff coordinated with Basics Human Resources, continuing our strong partnership to ensure his application was received and reviewed. Jeremy was subsequently interviewed and offered the position, earning a $24 an hour wage, which was a higher wage initially expected for that position. And today Jeremy is employed full-time at Basics and is working to advance his welding career. He's expressed deep gratitude for the opportunities and support provided by COIC and WorkSource staff, both during incarceration and post-release. Jeremy's journey highlights how coordinated reentry effort, employer partnerships, and targeted support services can make a meaningful difference in helping individuals successfully reintegrate into the workforce. And I did not add in here, he also is connecting with his family. He has kids he's reconnecting with as well, and just reestablishing that connection. I just told somebody, I think I told Bob that I'm probably the one on our team that doesn't get too sappy into, I can, but I don't usually, but there is a lot of, backstory there when people return, with returning citizens and, some of the barriers they have and just trying to reconnect with in the community, reconnect with family. So it's really important. Employment is a huge part of that as well. Any questions?
A great story. It's really important to be able to help people reintegrate. My family had my kids was adopted and his birth mother was in prison. Just knowing her story and how important it was to help her be able to reintegrate and be successful. But for all of us in particular,
I think in the 16 years I've worked with COIC, this is definitely my favorite workforce development program. Working in reentry and, just giving everybody that leg up to succeed.
And she's exceptional at it.
Oh, thank you.
And for all it's worth, I think that was a sappy story.
Yeah.
I thought that was very good.
Well, and the reason why I don't make them too savvy is because I have to make it through the presentation without crying myself. So I've had a few where I came close.
It's a very nice story.
Yeah, thank you.
Without being in my county, especially, I appreciate that, and I know working is really important to people getting their life back on track, and the transportation piece too, to help with that, so it's a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks so much.
Thank you.
So, we're gonna end with public comment. And I think maybe we have a couple folks here for public comment. Yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to come up to the table or?
Yeah, why don't you come up and sit up here with the lights on? And I think, generally,
Junior mid.
I don't think we have anybody else online. Rosie, staff member, Carol is a board member. So- Yeah, so I mean, with 3-4 minutes and then generally there's a listening sessions for us and just hear what people's concerns are. May ask a question or two, but it's not meant to be too much of that long, or at least in this setting.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then just state your name again.
I'm Stephanie Alston. I'm the CEO for JRJ Youth Services, and we have a continuum of services for kids. From homeless shelter, anti-trafficking, Big Brothers Big Sisters, street outreach, mediation, delinquent boys, just a whole host, education, vocational school. So, but I thank you for all you do. Thank you for being on the COIC board. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm just here to ask for help, because, and also to ask, about collaboration moving forward. How can we all work together? But, we were given on October 8th, we were given an amount for our shelter programs. And it was a couple $100,000 less. And so we revamped our budgets and we made it work. And we figured it out and tried to move some staff around. We have very high staffing costs because we have to, and I saw the transportation one in your discussion earlier, and it's like, yes, we need high quality people. But really ours is more about, having to meet, all the licensing guidelines and staff youth ratios. And so youth beds are more expensive, but, so the $200,000 cut, okay, we dealt with it. But yesterday, we received an email and it sounded like it's a done deal of, oh, now you're gonna receive 400,000 less on top of the 200,000. And honestly, there's no way, and you're gonna serve the same amount of beds, you're gonna have the same amount of beds. There's no way any business could be expected to do that. And we can't do that either. I mean, we can fundraise and we will try and fundraise, but it was like just a shock yesterday. I was like, we can't sustain this. And so I just want your help. I don't understand the process, the formula. I don't understand how that happened within a month, and we didn't have any discussions. And so we were just given this amount, and really it sounded like it was kind of a final. And the email said, based upon the initial funding of different beds in the system from the EO, the governor's executive order, many of which required 100% funding due to contract buyouts and updated financial information. So therefore we cut you guys. And it's like, wait. And I don't know if that's correct or not, but that was the email we got yesterday. And really it just sounded like, this is kind of the way it's gonna be. And so I hope my plea to you guys is I hope there's room for negotiation, because it's, again, honestly, no business could sustain that, and we can't either, and we couldn't maintain the beds that we have for youth, and we're the only youth service provider in that shelter system. So that's can you help? And I don't know, again, how the calculations were done, how were their assessments, I don't know who was involved. So I'm just asking you to look at that and can we move forward and have some conversations about that? So that's one. The second one is, really trying to work together. So, Tom Boddington, we were lucky enough to hire in June, and he did run a program in Ohio where he ran a continuum of care, and he was able to reduce homelessness by, I keep rounding it to 30%, but you keep telling me it's 31 point something percent. 31.5. And so what we see in the Tri-County and Central Oregon is that there's a lot of silos and everybody's struggling for finances, and how do we come together and work together, because the pit count keeps going up every year. And really, could we work together like they did in Ohio and reduce the homelessness? It's really hard to end, but I think there's a real appetite in Central Oregon for reducing it and getting everybody to work together. And honestly, the other piece is, I mean, one of our staff resigned in June, and she had represented us on MAC board and regional housing and oh gosh, HLC, COIC, COC, all that stuff. And so now we're gonna spread it out amongst a lot of staff, but it's so confusing. There are so many different avenues of housing. And so, like, how can we be better as a region? And how can we help our clients more? And how can we help the adults and integrate with everybody from the hospital that has to do urgent care to the law enforcement that deals with it, to Deschutes County behavioral health? There's all kinds of players to come to the table. And so that's my other plea is how can we all work together and make it better? And so, I just want to share those two things. Lastly, we just completed an impact report, a collaboration where we worked with 6 nonprofits. So Neighbor Impact for food, Mosaic Community Health for medical, First Story Housing and Furnish Hope to furnish the housing, stroke awareness, and then JBRJ for youth services. So again, just trying to help everybody, like this could be, go out to people that want to donate. And that we're all in it together. And this is the first, we hope to keep doing this every quarter, every 6 months. And feature different nonprofits so that we are working together in these tough financial times and we're helping each other out. So
Can you
that's
share copies of that with board members?
sure, yeah, I only have 5 of them, but.
If you send us the link, we can have one send it out.
So, yeah,
But also, yeah, if you have a digital.
I can get, yeah, I have a digital and I will send it. It's absolutely.
I think, we did hear a little bit about this, Stephanie, and I know that the staff are committed to continue this conversation.
Okay.
And the work on this issue, or the funding cuts are something that everybody's experienced. You probably know the legislature didn't fully fund, things, how they funded them before. There are some different criteria, and that's, there's a lot to look through. But I know staff wants to continue the conversation with you.
Yeah.
If they came across, maybe it's the final word, I don't know.
Yeah, and I
That's
haven't seen
intended.
any of the communication. It could be a learning opportunity too, in terms of how it was communicated, so.
Yeah, it looked like it was a done deal and it looked like it was because others couldn't take any cuts. And it was like, well, that's not fair. We're willing to take our share of the cut.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
everybody's
Everybody is.
experienced
Yeah.
some of,
Yeah,
right, everything across the whole system.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You
got it.
add anything?
No, I would just say that you are the only provider of youth services, and youth services was one of our top 4 priorities as a region. And so, and then to the degree that you want to be, we don't have oversight of the HLC of how that goes in terms of who's, we had a conversation about that. But in terms of the MAC or anything else, you are always welcome, and your team too. So just let us know who you want invited to the table, and we're always happy to have.
Great, great. Yes, we do. We need, because JBRJ wants to be represented. We want to be included. We want to work together. Again, collaboration. Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
And I can say personally, I know how important your services are. My family has benefited from them in the past with a family member who lived at the loft for a period of time, and he has some friends that they're actually been successful adults now, and the services that you all provided were essential to them moving forward and getting out of homelessness.
And that's our
So-
goal. And if we can work with kids, and get them out of homelessness, absolutely. Yeah, that's our goal. And it's easier to work with kids than it is adults. So, but thank you so much for your time and, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Yes, thank you, Tom. Thanks.
And I think that's it for public comments. There's nobody else here, right?
That's something like.
So next item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? The first one would be approval of the minutes, and the second one. So move. You vote at the same time. So we have a motion from Marv to approve both the minutes from October 2nd, 2025, and department reports. Second. Second. John. Further discussion? Anybody that changes to the minute? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain since I wasn't here last time.
One abstention. Anybody opposed? Did we hear a yes from you, Commissioner Taylor, as well? Okay.
There it is.
Great, there it is. All right. Motion passes. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is go into executive session to talk about employee matters. I have a little statement I have to read.
And I'm just, may I, just as a consideration, since we have a number of people in the room, we could move that to the bottom so that folks don't have to leave and take the
Sure.
other items, just as a consideration.
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine with me.
Okay. So everybody, that way folks
You
can,
need a motion
Yep.
or anything?
That makes sense.
I think you have the ability to move your agenda as much as you'd like to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just come back to executive session as well. So we're gonna start then with the new state life sheltering program overview.
Sure, so, we have no real alignment, as Stephanie mentioned, in our region in terms of as you all recall, I had this graphic of, you can see I don't know if anybody remembers me bringing this, but it was sort of all the little touch points of who's doing what, someone having a committee to talk about what's happening in terms of the unsheltered or the homelessness challenge that we have. And as many of you know, and in your packet, there's a memo. The governor, when she was elected, started out with Executive Order 2302, and that was declaring an emergency. And with that, provided a significant amount of funding into regions to do three things. One, prevention, two, rapid rehousing, and then the other was shelter. That had a 2402 executive order effort as well. And with that, that was the sort of startup funding. It was to build capacity. It was to bring beds online. We were required to stand up a number of shelter beds. And we've had presentations on that. Tonight is for the second iteration of what came out of that, which was House Bill 3644, which establishes the statewide shelter program. And you may have heard about that as well. The state does not have a statewide shelter program where they are identifying and supporting a structure of a continuum of shelter beds across the state of Oregon. And so our job for the last few years has been to provide the staffing, the convening, the facilitation to be able to bring the community together. We had a number of requirements, as you might imagine. We were to establish a multi-agency committee, which is the MAC group, that was defined with individual disciplines that we needed to have on that board. We were required to have emergency managers. We were required to have behavioral health specialists, public health, coordinated care organizations, our continuum of care, those doing the work. And we took a broader approach. We took an approach that was essentially, if you're doing the work, please come to the meetings, please provide your input. And so we have roughly 27 organizations that are part of that, everyone from our federally qualified healthcare center to Jefferson County Public Health to Deschutes County Behavioral Health. Just you name it, there's just a number of folks that have been helping to guide the process of how do we stand up the rapid rehousing, the prevention, as well as the shelter bed network. So House Bill 3644 establishes the statewide shelter program, and there have been fairly significant changes to A, the funding, B, the eligibility, and C, sort of the network that we were able to stand up. So the legislature was able to fund House Bill 3644, however, not fully funded. So through the legislative session, unfortunately, we were not provided the full funding to sustain the shelter bed network that we established. What does that mean for our region? It means that, similar to the conversation that you're hearing, first of all, the administrative costs that were allowed, the first investment, we were allowed to take 15% for the administrative costs. Again, we're building capacity, we're standing up programs, we're starting new programs. And the number has now been reduced to 6% for the programs, or 8% for the programs. With, I think it's 6% for the programs. We are allowed 2% as an administrative investment to be able to help provide the services to keep the statewide shelter program operating. It also gave us a list of the beds and the partners that were invested with the original executive order funding. And so if you received executive order funding for a certain number of beds, then we, as the provider of the regional coordinator of the service, we are required to sustain those beds to the degree that we can with the limited funding that we have. We are required to sustain 386 beds, and we are about 1.7 million shy of being able to do that with the funding that we originally had. So as you know, I'm not great at math, but that is not an equation that is, we received 10 million and we needed 11.7. We still have the same number of 386 beds. As you heard this evening, a bed is not a bed. A bed for a youth is more expensive than a bed for a congregate shelter for an individual, and same with a bed with a medically fragile person that needs to have around the clock care. All of those things are factors that we're taking into consideration. And so I share all of this as the context in that this really is a lot of the work that we've been doing with the first executive order and the second executive order. Our requirement has been to establish the committee, staff the committee, make sure that we are involving the community in the decision making. We are required to make sure that the dollars are being allocated in the manner in which they meet the eligibility requirements. We are required that they are doing the reporting that is necessary, the auditing that's necessary for the state, all of the compliance and the administrative functions, and making sure that they're doing what it is that they're required to do. Yes,
This is a super basic question,
yes.
but how did the Tri-County get 386 beds? What was available when she made this executive order, or how did we get 386, I guess?
So for your community, Redemption House said, we can stand up some new beds.
Okay.
We can, if you give us money, we can do that. And so Redemption House is on the list. And so now we have funding to Redemption House.
But there was no capacity ever put in for increasing. It was never like to say, we have 386 this year and we're gonna go to 400 next year and that
So
was
the-
never put into any of the order.
No. So the statewide shelter program, which is now a program through Oregon Housing and Community Services, is only to sustain the beds that were
existed at
invested.
that time.
Exactly. And there was a discrepancy on how many beds. We originally received a number of 555 beds for the $10 million, of which the 555 beds we may have in the region, but they were not all invested in with the executive order funding, which is a good thing because we're already 1.7 shy with the 386. Imagine if we had 555. And so this does not also mean that we will have the housing navigation, the outreach, and some of those other wraparound services that are necessary to be able to make sure that people are successful in their next steps. Because although this year it is not a requirement, next year they will be required to be tracked on exits to housing. Many provide shelter, and it is congregate shelter, or it is shelter for the purpose of the emergency shelter, and the shelter mission is to stabilize and not exit to housing. And the legislative directive for next year is that they're, to the degree that the numbers of what they will be required to meet is at 40% exit to housing, I don't know, but they will be required to exit to housing. And so, what is a question that we've asked on behalf of the region is, how do you exit to housing when you don't have housing to exit to? And it's not a question that it's not, sort of cheeky, it just is a reality. How do we get people to exit to housing when we don't have housing for people to exit to? And so this year, we were awarded the funding because we were the partner, the local planning group that was providing the administrative functions previously. And now the formality is the region has requested, normally this might be a housing authority, it could be a county, it could be your community action agency. Those partners are asking that we continue in the role that we are in and that we be considered the regional coordinator. And as the regional coordinator, we continue the functions that we've been doing, although a little bit more prescribed in terms of the reporting requirements, the compliance requirements. And then oddly, this year, we are awarded 2% to be able to operate. Next year, we will be awarded 15% to operate. One might ask, well, what are you to do the first year? And again, I'm not good at math, but it's sort of a bit of a head scratcher. I can share with you, though, that I'm really proud of our team because we were able to provide the first 2 iterations of executive order funding at 7.5%. And then we gave the remainder of that funding back to the organizations to be able to have additional funding for their operations and administrative costs. And so I'm not concerned about that with the existing staffing that we currently have. We will need, with some of the compliance improvements and things that they're looking for, we likely will want to add an analyst or someone that's going to be helping to augment and support the network of providers. Many of our providers are new in this space. Redemption House is mostly volunteers. there's a lot of heart-led work, but these requirements are now at a formality that is a state agency coming in and saying, we will audit and we will, you know, things are not in compliance and they are in the threat of being shut down. So we are best served to be technical advisors, to be able to make sure that they have the internal capacity to do what they need to do so that they can provide the service that we so desperately need them to provide. So the request tonight is just we are in this space. It feels a little bit like you're in the classroom and someone says, who wants to take this on? And kind of everybody looks at the ceiling and, you know, it is a very messy space in terms of not having enough funding, knowing the need continues to grow, knowing that the system is not with the alignment that, you know, Stephanie mentioned other areas and being able to, you know, really pull together and be able to align some efforts. We are making great strides. I think the work the Regional Housing Council is doing is really helping to align some of our electeds, our our Community Action Agency, Housing Authority, even the builders, being able to help identify what do we need to be doing as a region, from everything from our unhoused crisis to workforce and even market rate housing. We have the HLC and the MAC who are going to be going through a strategic planning effort of how do we strengthen those two efforts. We need to have a professional advisory council that tells the electeds, what is it that you need? And we need to not have, you know, a whole host of so many tables that all we're doing is kind of sitting and meeting and talking about the issue and not actually getting together for a strategy. This all aligns also with the strategic plan that we are the fiscal agent for. So tenfold has been brought on by the Homeless Leadership Coalition to do a strategic planning effort, which has not been updated since 2015. And so that will really help build the roadmap of how do we align some of the partners differently in a more strategic way to get better outcomes. And so all of that to say, this is all starting to coalesce. And one of the identified partners is us being able to convene, facilitate, and staff and provide the administrative function behind the scenes to make sure that the region's partners who do the work have a partner who is able to assist in getting that part done. And so it's really reaffirming, is this a space that you want us in? And if not, then I would love to know what partners, because the partners that we would normally go to have come to us and said, we want to support you in doing this. And that's why I'm just reaffirming that we would have to apply. There isn't anyone else in our region that there are requirements that you have to have. And so I'm just reaffirming that this is the journey that we want to be on.
Yeah, I have one or two informational questions. Does anybody
Yeah.
else have just informational questions? So
I have clarification.
clarification.
Yeah.
So was it the fall of 23 or the fall of 24 when we all decided to start going down this path of COSC providing some leadership to the region and specifically to Deschutes County because their first attempt didn't work?
Yeah.
To Susie's question, it's my recollection that it was the governor who established the numbers for the first go round. It wasn't us saying what we could do. It was the governor telling us what thou shalt do. It was broken into 3 layers, 3 kinds of help. And the other, and Central Oregon exceeded the numbers, my recollection.
Yep.
Right off the bat, so you got lots of accolades for overachieving. We all were concerned that, you know, it wasn't sustainable.
Yep.
It sounds like it wasn't. And what was my other concern? Well, your administrative costs that you've described, at 2%, I'm not sure somebody else is gonna pay Peter. To meet that criteria, and I'm not sure. You haven't talked about
Like how we do that.
diving into some other fund to.
Yeah.
To eat that, cause I don't think you can do it at 2%, but.
No.
So I guess my concern is, oh, and then in all of that, homelessness numbers continue to skyrocket. So what we did, what did we do? Cause it didn't work, didn't slow it down, didn't change the trajectory. Now we have less. So I kind of listened to, you know, where are we headed? Because you tell me now we're gonna do strategic planning and my eyeballs roll in the back of my head, cause
Sure.
I've been involved in too many of those things that takes months to accomplish. And then I'm not really sure what the end result is of all those efforts. So lots of sort of red flags flying and I just guess I want to hear more.
Yeah, so let me touch on a couple of things. So we informed the numbers. And so we worked with our partners. So we had worked with, although they're in different roles, we worked with folks at JRJ, we worked with folks at Shepherd's House, we worked with folks, we cultivated relationships, we reached out to Redemption House, those providing some shelters, the Jefferson County Faith-Based Network. We met and said, what do we think that we can do? And it really was, it was sort of nailing Jello to a tree. You know, it was our, you know, we hope it sticks, I don't know.
It was very quickly in 2023.
We had, I can't remember, we had like less than a month or something. I mean, these timelines were.
Oh, it's great. I remember.
Yeah. And then we did do very well. It brought in more funding, but the difficulty is many of the shelter beds and the programs that we currently have are 100% funded with the funding that came in. And that's in my opinion, that's a disservice to our network of providers, because if you don't diversify your funding and the funding changes, there isn't a way that the state is going to be able to backfill, or maybe that's not even the way that it should be looked at. I don't know. But what we have is there was a lot of money in the system. It was used for capacity. We grew capacity. Now it's in the stabilization and the sustainability piece with less money, but as you're hearing, it's not enough. And so there's going to be, we're kind of hitting that crescendo piece. Our role though, I share a lot of your concerns. Our role though is, if not for someone trying to wrangle this differently, trying to figure out how do we leverage the resources that we have. And what this will do is weed out some that stood up new nonprofits just for the purpose of cleaning encampments or doing some of the work that was sort of ancillary. The federal funding is reducing, the state is going to be getting much more prescribed. We will pay for this, but we won't pay for this. And you know, for us as an organization, being able to facilitate those sticky, hard, really messy conversations is a space that if we don't do that, we're going to continue to waste money and not align ourselves in a way that we can try to achieve success together. And so, you know, I just want to underscore, I share a lot of your concerns. There's not enough money in the system, nor are all the things that we're investing in. I would submit that some of the things that we're investing in is not the best bang for the buck. And we've pushed back on the governor's office and said we could be making other investments. Safe parking is a great example. We could be making it as a lower cost, better outcome sort of, you know, option. But none of the safe parking was originally paid for through the executive order funding, so none of those beds are on that list, so none of those beds are currently being. So I mean, it's,
That's for this 12-month period, 2026, right?
yes,
Then things change. So part of this, the question before us tonight
So
is
this
really
is the
about phase two,
tough-
right? I mean,
tough year,
managing the tough year, but are we gonna stay in it in phase two,
right?
right? So
Yeah.
So,
I think we have a few more information.
questions. So this year, we kind of know what we're looking at. Next year, we're gonna start tracking outcomes.
Yes,
they're tracking to exiting housing.
yes.
Are they going to maintain the focus on the low barrier shelter beds that have the least likelihood of exiting to housing?
Unfortunately, yes, and
And
they,
how do you exit a 14-year-old into housing that's at J bar J?
right. So there
Probably
will,
one of many questions.
yeah,
I mean,
And so there-
it seems to be, they're setting us up to fail. In a lot of these programs, I do have concerns about just the number of nonprofits that stood up to capture these resources when they became available, and now we're seeing. I mean, it's kind of it's a free market effect, right?
Yeah.
The resources are limited, we're going to see some of these organizations stutter because they shouldn't have existed to begin.
I think the only sort of piece that we can take is that we did provide service at a really critical time. And but I don't think that we need more nonprofits. I think we actually need better alignment. And so to your question, next year, there were, we could invest in up to 30% higher barrier, not high, not entirely, but higher barrier. This year, we are not allowed to invest in any of those. So if you are operating a higher barrier shelter, you have a 1-year gap. Again, it's a head scratcher, so we brought it to our legislative delegation and said, this is the short list. Change on the other end, but you can't expect that these organizations are gonna go from 15% to 8 to 2 to 6 to. And then, yes, Matt's operating at 30%, you know, one of the 30% high barrier shelters, but not this year, but next year. So please keep those going. How? And so we've pushed back and we're doing a lot, working with our legislative delegation. We're working a lot with our lobbyists on behalf of the region. But again, we're in that space of someone in the region needs to be the body that receives the funding from the state, from OHCS. And that application process is, it is essentially us right now. And they are expecting us to apply to be that formally. It's for 5 years. And in addition to that, we will be the body doing the advocacy and the work to try to align the system a little better and trying to get good outcomes to the degree that we can. We have already signaled we won't meet those outcomes. And we is the broader we as an organization, we're gonna hold in compliance and work with our nonprofit providers, but we don't have homes to exit to. So exactly how would you like us to achieve those goals? And so did we have a short session? I know that this will be front and center in terms of additional funding and some of the eligibility challenges.
Tweaking some parts.
Yep, exactly. And then, of course, we have a long session after that. But the real question for tonight is, this is where we are. It's messy, sticky, it's not well-defined. It's not even how any of us would probably, you know, pencil it out if we were having a beverage. But I have confidence in it'd be an adult beverage or two. I do have confidence in our region to continue to push ourselves to figure this out. And I share the concerns of how do we get ahead of this? We have a housing crisis. We have a public lands challenge, encampment challenges. We haven't invested in our youth services. We haven't invested in youth pediatric behavioral health services, and that's just coming online after decades. There's a lot that our region needs, and I have confidence that we can continue to stay the course and wrangle this as best as any organization in working with our partners. Yeah.
Two
Yeah.
questions on the admin side. So
Mhm.
one,
Oh, right, yeah.
I think kind of Tim was getting at is sort of, what's your plan to weather the storm? Is it this current
Yep.
calendar year for this transition year?
So we have 2 other buckets of funds. We still have the long-term rental assistance. It's known as the LTRA program. And we are able to provide some of the staffing and the administrative costs with that. And then we also have the ORI program, which is the Oregon Rehousing Initiative. I'm trying to get all my acronyms. And we also have some reserves that are held over from those programs that we are able to continue the funding. So it is not, good or bad, our organization, you don't get to pull from another budget line. It either is there or it's not. And so we are braiding that funding to be able to continue to provide the service. And so that we can continue to operate in that
And you're
space.
generally feeling pretty good about that in terms of grading those dollars
Yeah,
together.
yep, it's for that purpose, and we've been really good stewards with that funding. And we did play a game of chicken with the state, at the end of the year last year. They wanted us to spend down some money, and we felt like, we needed to be able to continue to operate on behalf of the region, and so we carried some of those dollars over and we got to yes.
And then the second, get the transition to this phase two. Are you're not required, are you required to spend 15%?
No, no.
So you can go up to that as a maximum. So,
Yeah, yep,
you know, sounds like based on experience, you might be able to get to a number that's, say, 10%. If you have a little more responsibility, but not necessarily the full 15, and be able to free up some dollars
Yeah.
for things that somewhat like we heard about tonight.
yeah, so Michelle, keep me honest here, but we met with the MAC and said, we'd like to take the full 15%. We also weren't sure, are they gonna claw back some of the funding too? I mean, it's an executive order, it's a new administration, who knows? So we took the full 15% and then we redistributed those dollars that we didn't use back to the overhead and administrative costs to the programs. So programs like Shepherd's House, programs like, and so it landed in the budgets of JBRJ and others. We operated off 7.5% through the ability for us to provide all of the services.
You could sort of take
Is that
10.
a,
Yeah, and that 15% is across everything, so it's not just COIC getting
Right.
50%.
Yeah.
It's 15% admin max for the whole region.
yep,
And so we capped all of the subrecipients at 10%. So we make sure that we had enough for COIC because we were all admin at that point. And then we were able to save some and actually redeploy it as program costs instead of true administration costs.
And then as the geographic scope, will it be changing as part of the new work? It's still just the 3 counties, right?
it is. And then we originally thought we would be receiving, we took a $400,000 haircut in October, and that was because the $400,000 ended up going to Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, but it was identified for our region, and they said that that was what we would be receiving, but we ended up receiving 10 million instead of the additional 400,000. Yeah. And then, so we, in terms of a couple of the shelters, particularly Madras, being able to weather a large cut. So we have worked with them really closely to make sure that they can continue to operate. And we are, as mentioned, we're in the negotiation discussion with all of the other programs of what can you operate off? What were you funded for previously? What were you funded for this time? What do you need to fund? That sort of thing. In some of the budgets, Shepherd's House, they had things in the budget that are not eligible expenditures this time, so we had to back those out. It's sort of been evolving.
Well, so the bigger question, you have an informational question, then shift to the.
I got ideas.
That's good, okay.
There was a different version of this board 2 years ago. I'm just thinking back. So remember, I chaired this last year and now you're chairing it this year. And some of these choices were made right before that. And we did have a big changeover in the COIC board. So that helps me understand, oh, okay, that's why I feel disconnected from some of these policy choices. And my memory may not be as bad as I'm thinking here, but that helps me right now to remember that. The county has put, Deschutes County, Daddy Warbucks, put a lot of money into, a lot of these efforts, though. My point is, remember this, I mean, we had one-time ARPA dollars, we were writing checks in all directions. It was a point of pride that Deschutes County was stable, fiscally stable enough to be able to send dollars out. There are some places around the country and in the state of Oregon where it was save yourself first for the local jurisdiction. We wrote a lot of checks to support some of these efforts on top of these dollars too. So, I mean, let's remember that. That's kind of a double whammy right now. So then it gets to the concept of, is this the best practice to just say, low barrier shelters, we're gonna hold on to these amount of beds and we're watching the problem grow. I think that's the scenario we're in right now. I think that's what we're seeing. There's generally kind of, just at a high level, you think of it as 3 ways, medically fragile, elderly, somebody that's not gonna go back to work, and severe addiction, bad choices, needs help, could get back on track. And then just free range people living on their own terms, not wanting to engage with the community. So I don't know if that breaks out into thirds, but that's the way I think of it as, we're empowering all those people just to hang out. So we're not separating, by doing these efforts too. I think the state of Oregon, so this is gonna be a higher picture, we need to do some, some very strong supports for severe and persistent mental illness, SPMI, whatever that looks like. So that's the medical path. We've got health department, we've got behavioral health, and we do a lot of things down those paths, but we're mixing everybody together in some of these situations. So then, I mean, who's given us the guidebook or the one pager that says, well, this is great, let's do more of it? I think we're going the wrong direction, and that's, so then I get to say that politically.
So on the question of COIC retaining its role,
No, I'd like to say no, I mean, if we're gonna get to the discussion, I'll vote no on it, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I see what happened here. It was a previous version of the board, I'm not picking a fight here, but, yeah, we've got to, if we wanna be Central Oregon, we wanna do good things for people that need help. We have got to get serious about what do we wanna do for ourselves, who's leading, who's following, who, some people are gonna either fade away or need to be asked not to do what they're doing. And we gotta get serious about this. And I know there's tons of effort that's going on. Everybody comes to the table, especially when there's money, but, being driven, and so then rule number one for us commissioners, counties, when we go to our Association of Oregon Counties, watch out for unfunded mandates. Unfunded mandates. Here, we're gonna give you just enough money to get something started, and then you guys just keep running with it. So you're pre-spending our money before we go somewhere? How does this happen? So I just feel like this is a little bit of that. And it's, the state budget is just ballooned. Ours has gone up a lot too, obviously, but it's all gonna plateau because of those one-time dollars. So, thoughts?
and so your thought then about, we have potentially, the legislature's allocated a pretty big chunk of money.
Someone will be doing it.
Yeah, someone's gonna be doing it.
It doesn't just go.
It seems to me that we have an opportunity to start to shape things and address some of the questions you're asking.
Well, so then
Through
that
this
was medicine in a spot where I was really gonna do that, because, when the executive order came in, the MAC committee came, and I mentioned this earlier, MAC committee showed up, all of a sudden, oh, we had a committee meeting, we decided to go this way, I'm like, who did what, where did it go? It's because I heard about the executive order, but I never heard about the MAC. I don't need to be on the MAC, but I mean, we could have had it at a board meeting at some point, at least a work session, explaining what was going on.
I recall hearing about that.
Yeah, so there's people running without coordinating. It's just, we're the political people.
It's messy.
Yeah.
I guess other than tracking the results, what? I mean, we get the checkbook and we have to track the results. What authority do we have to direct funding? Because I think Tony's making a lot of very valid points where we're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes at this point.
Sure.
We gave these people are all, a lot of these organizations are payday rich. And now we're coming to mid-month and they've already spent everything,
Sure.
right? And so we have to start holding them accountable. Do we have the leverage to do that? And if COIC isn't the body to do that, mechanically, is there another organization in the region that's equipped to do the work?
Well, I'd say I wouldn't
Yeah.
pick a fight with any nonprofit that's
Yeah.
doing their God-given
Yeah.
mission. I mean, they're doing what they want to do. But we've got the responsibility, and we're watching this problem, expand instead of contract. So I'm just.
Yeah,
Neighbor impact, yes, did I look, didn't they? Weren't they the COC?
yes, they were. So Neighbor Impact that's what started all of this. Neighbor Impact came to the board and said, we'd like you to take on the COC. Because we feel that the coordination and the facilitation and the work that you do as an organization fits nicely in with. So in answer to your question, we have no more authority than anybody else. And what we do have is talented people that help on the technical advising side that can help on setting up some of the reporting, setting up some of the system pieces, particularly for the nonprofits that maybe just haven't. Redemption House is a great example. I mean, it's heart-led work, but there are requirements on the other side. Some may say, no, we just really want to operate on our own. We don't want all the, the mess of the strings of the state. But the need is high, that the need continues to grow, so.
But if they're not, if these organizations aren't hitting their KPIs.
Then money would be withheld by the state.
And, but, okay, so the state's ultimately gonna be the one that makes that.
Yep.
We're just simply validating the numbers that they're supporting, sending them on, and the state is
Yes.
deciding nothing.
Yes,
Okay.
yep. And so we really would be, we're not a pass-through, we are compliance. We are responsible to an audit to how the funds are spent. We are required to make sure that they're spent in a way that they're eligible. We've made great strides, although it feels probably not like enough in terms of informing what it is that we have. The ability for safe parking to be eligible is something that I was on the committee that helped to establish House Bill 3644. To the degree that it gets through the massaging of the legislative session, though, is not always what you start out with, you get. But we're as close to the mothership as you can get. It's evolving. The good thing is that there's also a network beyond just us, and it's a statewide network that are all asking these same questions. And we've asked since day one, tell us what it is that you want us to achieve and give us the dollars that are available and allow us to use the assets and the talent and the resources that we have in the region to meet that. That is just not where they're at yet. And I know that's not necessarily an answer, but our job isn't that we would then, have to augment that funding or somehow cover those costs. They just would be ineligible from the state perspective. It does put us in a position where big bad COIC might have to convey that message. But my hope is that there's trust in the ability for us to be able to say that, we've worked with them, they've decided to opt out, or, we were able to get them additional funding and they were able to figure out how to be compliant. Our goal is to see the region thrive. It's in our mission. To the degree that we can do that in this space, yet to be determined.
Commissioner, do you?
I'm just listening.
I mean, where are other folks in terms of this question about COIC essentially applying to be the regional coordinator for this next 5-year period, which at this point, as I understand it, does theory has a funding stream.
Yep.
For those 5 years.
Yep.
From the state.
And if not, it would be like no other program we have. I mean, every program, if the funding is gone, we don't do the work. That just isn't, that's how it works.
Is there a best practices philosophy about this as far as, no barrier sheltering? Percentage of population, where can we learn about this?
You mean in terms of the approach to reducing homelessness?
Yes, an emergency shelter is a critical piece to getting people stabilized to then be able to get into typically transitional housing, not typically going from I was in the woods to now I'm stabilized for a couple of days into an apartment. Usually there's a whole lot that goes on in between that. There's
So the point I was trying to make before.
I'm trying to be polite,
Yeah.
and
Bunk
so,
beds in a church does not get people to apartments the next week. It just doesn't work.
but it is an important part of that stabilization for people.
I guess my comment to you, Tony, of being against it, who is then gonna pick up the ball to do? That's my question. Who are you thinking would be better at doing this than?
Well, the more we do, the worse it's getting, so we need to
I
take a step
agree
back.
with you. I agree with you, and I agree that there's not a lot of bang for.
Maybe it's better if we don't do anything. And I'm not saying that technically or upset at a person.
Just pick up
I'm
the
just
ball.
referring to, we're watching this get worse and we're working harder and it's still getting worse. So, and
I
that's why I
agree.
just asked, what's the best practice? I don't have a feel for that,
It's to build the system. You need
But the way I see it is, the citizens, the citizens of Oregon legalized marijuana, we legalized psilocybin, we decriminalized drugs. COVID happened, so we've had a lot of complications. Some people moved here, which brought us over a tipping point. Because we've always had, this is an ancient problem since, beginning of time, we've always had somebody that more resources than the other, housing and not housing. But we got to a tipping point. So Oregon is in a bad spot. And as I say, it feels like we're just digging still. I don't know. I don't have the answer.
The
No,
best
but
practice
I'm just
is-
saying, I agree with what you're saying, but who else is gonna pick up the ball?
To help,
That's,
Well,
that's.
if it's picking up the ball, it's chasing the dollars from the governors from this bill.
Yeah, I mean, are we gonna, what are we gonna do in the region? Because it is increasing and everything. So who better than this organization? Who at least trimmed their administrative, who put it back into programs. I mean, I'm not saying I can solve this problem. It'd be great, we could, but who do you pass the buck to? There's
Well,
no one in my.
And so so think about this, I mean, neighbor impact is our community action agency, and that's food bank. And, LIHEAP, energy assistance, all kinds of different things. COIC is a multi-purpose Swiss Army knife of getting great things done here. Maybe this isn't our core mission, and you're the
And it
center
may
of a
not
lot of
be-
this.
It may not be long-term. I don't disagree. I think that we have some partners that are, maybe this is closer to their mission than, but in terms of the convening, the facilitation, the administrative function and the alignment piece, that is in our mission. To your question, the number one thing that we could do is invest in early childhood. It's brain developed between,
Commission on Children and Families,
I know.
Well, it may also be investment in prevention, right? And-
Exactly.
Rent stabilization,
Yeah.
helping people
I know.
not lose their homes for those who are on the edge. I mean, that's not necessarily helping somebody that's
Yeah.
already really struggling with some combination of mental health and
Yeah.
substance abuse. I would push back a little bit and say there's been no progress at all. I think it's not what I see as a community member that's lived here for almost 30 years. I mean, I've seen the problem grow, but over the last 5 to 7 years, I've also seen the communities come together in a variety of ways to try to begin to address the problem more substantially. And in Bend, we certainly have stood up a lot more shelter beds that have gotten people off our streets. Now, the counselor, but I see people on the street still all the time, around Weimar in particular is our current probably biggest problem, right? But overall, I used to have people on the street in front of my former workplace at the environmental center. I don't see the kind of homeless camps that we have on the street anymore. And part of that is because there are more shelter beds. Other communities, I don't know the details of them, but I hear little stories. They're happening in other communities as well. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we're also listening to the service providers who are actually out there doing the work every single day. I mean, we've heard from them at the city recently that what they're seeing, this one provider saying that we are seeing more people, a higher percentage of people who are still living on the streets are some of the most difficult to work with, that are the most long-term, and the other folks are getting into this. Now, that's a very big generalization, and probably people would disagree with parts of it, right? But I think it's not accurate to say that there has been no progress at all. The problem does continue to grow. It's been, I think, developing for quite a long time. And I don't know it's reasonable for us to expect it to be solved in 2 and 4 year cycles that connect maybe to our election cycles. It just doesn't work that way, right? That's not a problem like this is not gonna be solved.
Well, and I mean, there's absolutely some of that stuff, because I think we peaked. The numbers seem to be bad, but, we lost, track of China Hat. We've started to manage the TSSA north of Bend. We've got East Redmond, where we're trying to get that all coordinated up. So I agree, we're doing a lot here. But the numbers are still getting worse, makes my head hurt.
Well, the providers tell us that that's because we're better at counting people, those systems. The combination of that and more.
That is true, at the point in time, we'll tell you that, they've gotten, and I know in Pineville, our per
We need
county.
to get more accurate.
So I know
They're
there's
getting
people that we haven't heard from yet, so let's.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I had been on the faith-based network, which is running the new shelter, and during the time that was getting open, and just, I do see COIC's strength as being able to help with compliance and the administration and all of that, because our group, of course, didn't exactly know what we were supposed to be doing, and so you're making it go forward. I'm thrilled that we have something in Jefferson County. We have more going on there. It's not perfect. And also requirements of how much the shelter needed to be opened have grown. And so everybody that, person on the street says, well, why can't that be open 24/7 or whatever? It's like, well, it's dollars. And so that's what we're dealing with on the dollars. But I just think if we don't do it, that it's likely kind of a disaster. So that's my feeling.
Anybody else that hasn't spoken up yet that wants to share
I wanted to circle back on one of the questions and just find out if it wasn't COIC that was applying to this, who would it be? There was a reference to neighbor impact maybe being the original one that was turned over to COIC, so maybe for the historical context. If it wasn't COIC, who would you anticipate would go after this?
We would need to court a partner. And one of the reasons that Neighbor Impact wanted us to take this on is that they were housing the continuum of care. And they were the largest recipient of the funding that was coming through to the continuum of care. And so it was a perception, and they also felt like they had taken it as far as they could and were not able to give it the infusion that it needed to be achieving. They're required to have a strategic plan, of which that it's outdated. That's why we're doing that. They're required to do the point in time count, so that's evolving and strengthening too. And so they saw our organization as the partner that they wanted to partner with and not be the direct lead of. And they see this as a link to the broader housing, not just in the silo of prevention or immediate emergency housing or shelter. And so we work very closely. Matter of fact, today, actually, we partner for the prevention requirements and that work in the long-term rental assistance. We subcontract to them. And so again, we are the administrative hub, and then we contract to partners to do the work. We wouldn't want to get into the day-to-day operations work, which I would really encourage us not to think about doing. There's gaps in that arena as well. But we do well in cultivating new relationships to try to bring on more support. Our network needs more refinement, and it needs more providers of different types. And so it would be courting a partner. Right now, Neighbor Impact is a partner with us as a subcontractor and supporting us in moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it was getting at if it's not us, then who?
Yeah.
Which it sounds like we would need to find our replacement if it wasn't us.
There's nobody knocking on the door to say, hey, we'll do it, we wanna do it, right? That's not.
No, half the time I feel like, hey, Mikey, try this. I remember those commercials?
Oh, yeah.
So, and yet at some point, this might be enough of a thing that it spins off and it becomes its own thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But right now, we have the partners, our housing authority, our continuum of care, the community action agency, those partners that are at the table helping to structure this. Federally qualified healthcare center are asking us to continue in this space.
Well, it seems like we at least.
Oh, yeah, Seth.
Oh, yep.
So I appreciate everything that Tony said. I think you bring up so many good points, Tony. Commissioner DeBone, sorry. But here's the thing. I mean, the goal is to eliminate homelessness altogether. We are the most powerful and affluent country in the history of the world. There's no reason why anybody should be sleeping outside on the ground unless they choose to do so. And that's what we need to recognize. I think that we are developing the infrastructure and the means to help those that truly want help. I think it's very rare for individuals, at least in our county, that truly need the help and truly want the help, where there's not opportunities for them to advance in life. There is the problem, though, with, once again, I'm going to reiterate this, the people that are choosing a lifestyle, or the ones that are suffering from severe mental health issues or addiction issues. And it's going to take a whole top-down approach from the state of Oregon. We need to just stop building places for people to come get out of the weather. And we need to start, I mean, if we get back to the philosophy of having an institution for people that are suffering from mental illness to go to. Other states have been successful at this. When somebody gets arrested, they get an evaluation to see, are they truly a criminal, or are they suffering from mental health issues? And if they are, they get sent to a different facility other than a jail or a prison. We need to somehow stop the game of just providing an opportunity for people that can't get help or don't want help to just come in out of the cold. We can build 100 million of these places, but we're still going to see them during the day in Bi-Mart or on the street or whatever. And so just the state of Oregon constantly funneling tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to provide shelters is not the answer. The answer is to get people off the streets into a home and into the workforce. And so if COIC can help guide that, like Tony was saying, if we can develop a system or help guide it in a certain way, of course, if you're just dumping money out of the sky, there's going to be a lot of people out there running to pick it up and to build whatever they can to keep collecting that money. We're almost building a homeless industrial complex where there's just so much money coming in that there's a lot of just small individual organizations that are perpetually getting funding without any real coordinated effort in the region. And so I don't know what the state of Oregon, what their plan is, if they're just relying on us to start coming up and building these facilities for the behavioral health, for the mental health, if they're wanting us to, I mean, I'm not understanding what the philosophy of the state is, and it's hard to move forward on the ground in our counties with this funding because we don't want to just continue this spiraling effect that we're seeing, where we're just building facilities to get people out of our hair for a night, but not really solving anything. So I would love, I mean, I don't mind COIC being the coordinator, but let's coordinate. Let's figure out what we can do to focus. If we need more of a focus and we can help get those funds into transitional housing, then so be it. Let's figure out what is working, what is not, and what other options can we seek, and what do we need to advocate for at the state level. I know that's not a very good answer, but we just kind of keep kicking this ball down the road without ever solving anything. I mean, we have to acknowledge the players that are in the game and the ones that aren't going to be integrating into society and functioning in society in a meaningful way. What do we do with those individuals? And how do we stop the the perpetuation of those that just want to, hey, I'm fine living like this. I get my handouts, I get a roof over my head, and then I get the freedom to not be responsible with my life. So how do we handle all of those things? And I don't feel like people are adequately addressing those issues.
I think part of maybe what I'm hearing, is a sort of a, I don't hear a lot of opposition to COIC being in this role, mostly hear support for that. And maybe even if it's reluctant, that there's nobody else that's gonna do it, and we have an opportunity to maybe shape something, but the other piece might be over the next 2 legislative sessions of advocating for a little bit more, local say, local control and how the dollars are used, and not just this pure dictate from the state. I mean, I do think that we all have to be conscious of a continuum of housing opportunities, and that shelter is gonna need to be part of that, but part of what people are speaking to is what are the next steps, right, and how do we get there? And so maybe that needs to be part of the agenda for the COIC board, working with you, Tammy, and others to say, hey, you know, this is a good first step, but what's the bigger picture? What's the longer term strategy? Especially with these folks that are more difficult to serve, and those, you know, who may not want help. That's definitely part of the population, right?
Beyond just reporting the data, what can we do? How can we put it to use? I mean, if we're gonna look at how many people are exiting into housing, can we start to look at what is the actual cost benefit? And see which of these programs are more successful, and then as an organization, we can advocate to shift the funding where it actually is going to do the good, so that we're starting to identify the organizations that are successful, and understanding that JBAR-J is going to have a harder, their return on investment, their ROI is going to be lower than an Oasis Village or say parking program, right? But you know, we can meter that out, but we can start to see who's just getting the dollars and who's actually putting the dollars to work. And I think that actually does help us, that starts to at least address the problem as opposed to just kind of throwing money at it, hoping it goes away.
And I would.
Can
just
I,
put in
can I,
a-
can I jump in and address something really quick? I think we all need to acknowledge also that what the state of Oregon is doing and this mega funding for homelessness is not sustainable. And we're gonna start seeing reductions in what the state is pouring out. And we're seeing that, I think, already. I'm not buying into the promises that, oh, next year or the year after, we're gonna start seeing more funds. I think that this is the beginning of the tightening of the funds coming through because it's not sustainable. And they're going to be more reliant on the counties to pick up the slack, and the counties and the cities to pick up the bill. And so, while we have these funds, we need to seriously address how to transition people off the streets in a meaningful way. And whatever that looks like and whatever COIC's role is, um, fine, so be it. But we need to realize as an organization and all of the organizations that we're funneling money to in Central Oregon, that the dollars are going to start slowing down. They're going to start going away. And so what's a model for sustainability for those organizations? They need to start reflecting on that. And also, how are we actually solving the problem?
And just added to Seth, just look at the pressure that's being put on us right now for mental health, and the county's coming in and they want us to pick up that. Crook County, I mean, we're fiscally okay, but we don't have that kind of money. You don't have that kind of money, Seth. So you're exactly right in everything.
We don't either.
I don't know, Danny Warbucks over here, but the bottom line is, it's not just, you know, and it's sad because we have this mental institution that's in Salem, and I'm not sure Seth was on the tour with us that time or
It
not.
was.
But it's totally towards criminal, you know, we aren't having a place for our severe and whatever, and I agree with everything he said, but yes, we're in it's not gonna get any better, it's gonna get worse, but again, who's gonna pick up this ball? I agree with what you said, John. Let's do the statistics, let's look, and then we have actual numbers or results that then we can go and at least say, hey, you know, Mike McLean, look here. And, you know, Vicky and whoever else, you know, these are our things, and that's how we hopefully change them.
I don't understand why we're allowing the nonprofits to steer the negotiation. I understand the work that they do is important, but I think if we don't let the companies that counties and cities employ to build roads to come in and decide what the road should look like. And I don't know why would we do that with this particular service as compared to anything else. We should put out an RFP, have them bid, have them have reportable action, and we'll go from there. To me, it has never quite made sense to me the way that we look at homelessness in this issue.
Well, one of the suggestions was to do a per bed cost, and that would take out all of our youth beds. That would take out our beds. I mean, because a bed isn't a bed isn't a bed.
Right.
And so.
And I'm not saying we should look at them
Yeah.
all, but we don't look at all roads. I mean,
Yeah,
97 doesn't cost the same to build as, you know,
Yeah.
as a neighborhood. In fact, you know, we're not putting roundabouts, you know, in a residential block, like,
Yeah.
so we could look at, you know, we've got some high value beds, we've
Yeah.
got kind of bulk, kind of what we're.
Yeah.
Which is
So
not a
I'm
conversation for this.
I'm conscious of the time, just to point out for everybody, so just a little bit after 7 o'clock, we do have two other agenda items. One of them is probably gonna take 10 to 15 minutes.
Why don't I just move to support
Yeah.
COIC remaining in a lead convener and coordinator role by applying to serve as the statewide shelter program regional coordinator for Central Oregon. That's a big title. That,
Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay,
So I would like to amend that motion by adding the words for the next year, which forces us next fall to have this conversation about, okay, so what? You know, there are a lot of things we're talked about here tonight about accountability and a lot of other kind of stuff, but you know, somehow you gotta get to the so what and question. And so to me, adding one year sort of, okay, COIC staff, go out. You know, figure out how to allocate the money, more importantly, figure out how to bring all those nonprofit groups and everybody else together to answer the questions that we raised this evening. And that gets us through a short session, see what the legislature is gonna do. It gets us to next fall, where the governor will be, if she gets reelected, be creating a budget for the next biennium and legislative goals and whatnot. We'll be able to see what that looks like. And if we don't like it, it gives us a chance to get out.
So it's a 5-year contract, and so I don't know that we could make that commitment. We certainly could transition it to another partner if that were the direction. If it were as easy as just a year to convene all of this and make it work, I mean, I love the pressure, I love the challenge. We are rebuilding a system that's been there for decades and trying to align things that is very political, not enough money, and leads to challenge. I'm just laying out,
But
so
we've been at it for lots of years, and so.
The other information point is that we're already in the role for 2026. Right? I mean.
Yeah.
We're actively doing the distribution of the funds right now. That's actually what we heard about from K-Bar Abraham. This is a question for future years.
2027.
so it'd be, yeah, so I hear you. We can always get out. I mean, as an organization, we can always say, we're done doing it. I mean, but I think I want to manage expectations in that it is a 5-year commitment. And in that time, it would take us probably a year to cultivate a relationship with someone that would be able to meet the obligations and take it on. And that would have the community support in doing so. So I'm not saying don't put a year in, I just want to manage expectations.
I think as a board though, is there consensus that we do want to take a closer look at the reporting?
And then just bring it back in a year for discussion
Sure.
as to how we could, I don't know how I amend, but are we, in 1 year, we rediscuss our position or our results or however that works out. Not quite as nice as what you wrote, but.
Yeah, and I mean, the ways that we would be accountable, is our region reporting in the timelines that are required? Are we meeting the eligibility and the all of the requirements that the program requires? To the degree that we're solving homelessness, we don't do direct service. Are we maintaining the bed number and the structure that we are required to retain? I mean, I think those are things that we could, I would hope that maybe are we able to actually increase the number of opportunities to where we can take any savings and put it into things like safe parking or other preventative things that are even further on the spectrums of the continuum. Definitely encourage that. Our ability to change eligibility, to get a provider to do whatever they might decide they completely opt out. We could have a provider that goes out of business. So our job would be to find and cultivate and prep and train another provider using the network of other providers. So I want to be held accountable to the things that we actually have a say in doing. And it's on the compliance side that I think you can hold us really accountable to the region in terms of what strides the region makes in reducing homelessness or, that's such a broader question.
So does that need to be in the motion or like Tim wants to put, or is that just naturally understood that you will be bringing this back to the board for discussion as this progresses?
This agreement is for July 26th through June of 2031, so if we were revisiting this, in the spring or Q2 or Q1 or Q2 of 2027, that would have been after a year in the role. To your point, Tim.
Would increased tracking and reporting to the board might be a really good executive director role.
Yeah, well, you're probably noticing that the packet's getting bigger and bigger in terms of some of the stuff that we're helping to sort of coordinate. So this would be, we could have a tracking mechanism there and we are accountable to what we're doing right now. So there's a mechanism of us coming back and saying, here's what if we were not able to meet those thresholds, we would be out of compliance with the state, and we'd be hearing about that as well. We would be signaling hopefully ahead of time and letting you know, but what I can assure you is that we have a very talented team that knows this work inside and out. We have one of the best data people on the team, Rosie, who's joining us tonight, knows this work. And so I have confidence in our ability to support the region. And so I just, whatever you want us to report on and how often, I'm happy to. It just is, yeah.
I mean, just to point out, if we were to come back a year from now, we would be literally like 4 months into.
So,
Sure.
so I'll withdraw my amendment, but I want to express my frustration
Okay.
that all we're doing is perpetuating we're gonna administer a program that we all tonight have admitted is not working and won't work. And we're gonna commit ourselves to doling out state dollars, following state rules, knowing that those rules won't work. And that the problem will continue to get worse. And so at some point in time, how do we either tell the state, this isn't working, and, you know, you can't keep buying us.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna, $10 million, oh, that's a lot of money to go buy beds. Well, it doesn't buy many beds, it buys 300 beds. $10 million buys 300 beds, that's big. And
We do that.
there's
by
no-
election. We do that by election, that's.
I know, but there's just no, and for us, once we're in, so I'll withdraw my amendment.
Well, do we want to attach something that says we want to revisit this at some point? I mean,
Yeah.
if we're saying we're gonna pursue the role, it seems a little silly to have staff go do it and not even give them a chance to get something going.
No,
So we're
I
gonna give
agree
some
with you there,
direction.
Yes.
Let's give them some direction, but let's say in the motion, as sort of in the minutes, that we're expecting to have some kind of review and evaluation after 1 year in the role. Or 18 months or something, yeah, because that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I will amend my motion to accept Mike's comment.
Okay.
So
With my second.
Yeah.
I will
with a review, so it's to
Yes.
move it forward, but with
Just
a
what you
review
said.
after
Yes.
the first year in the
Okay.
role.
We got it.
Then we had a second, right?
Yeah, right over, and Christie.
I second it
acknowledged
again.
So, any further discussion? Cheryl, is that your hand or is that the mouse? It's just sitting. there.
It's
It's the mouse.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
It's a cute little hand.
I don't want to land.
All right, so all those in favor,
I,
all those opposed,
Hey,
one vote.
I respect that.
Against? Anybody abstaining? Okay. Motion passed.
After the vote, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's okay to have a split vote, what a
It's
great
true.
discussion, what a great discussion we
Yeah.
just had.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward, I camped on the side of Redmond for a week one time, and I got to know a whole bunch of people out there, in fact, one guy didn't wanna see me go, so I am deep into this topic, it's not like I'm just walking past and pointing to something here.
Now,
Yeah.
Tony, just to add to your camping out there, I went to the Best Care Clubhouse. And I got a friend and she thought that I was someone that needed to sit down and was part of the clubhouse. So just, you may have homeless, but I have the other side. Just-
There you go,
Okay,
there you go.
just to give a little acknowledgement, you know.
Well, back in the comment section, I just thought we made some progress and we would lose some traction if we just gave up now, so.
I agree.
We do four-wheeling and stuff like that, it's like sometimes you gotta go over some obstacles and learn how to go over it, so.
And again,
Thank you.
who's gonna carry the ball? That's,
Yeah.
Great.
that's, yeah.
And if I may, I think it would probably be helpful to hear from some of our partners to have Scott Cooper or, even Linda Connell come from our housing authority and kind of share what they see the value as and their encouragement. I joke about the, hey, Mikey, he likes it. We have a close partnership and we do work really, making sure that we're all taking part of the system and trying to do what we can to move the ball down the road,
There is frustration in seeing how high the barrier is, and then we get over it and then they make it higher, so
Right.
that's been
Yeah.
going the entire time. Yeah, but
And they might change the eligibility requirements and add more in the short session, and we might decide to opt out. We
Yeah.
might say, look, now you're putting way too much, it just isn't something that makes sense for us as an organization. But right now, it's very similar, although more reporting cadence for the work that we've been doing. And I think we've got the talent and the mission and the drive. So thank you for that.
Are you on the rulemaking committee for HB 3644?
No, but Mickey is involved and Mickey's part of our team, and then Amy Fraley as well with the city of Bend. I was on the committee that helped to establish what we were proposing to the legislature. That was part of the menu. Yeah.
So I'm gonna move us on to the next agenda item. Michelle, ask you to be as succinct as possible.
Yep, got it.
And I just want to throw in, we're happy to have a consultant with, a lot of ideas.
Yes. Thank
About how to
you.
streamline and make it better.
Thank you.
Need that.
You need more?
Okay, so you'll notice in this month's consent agenda, there was no financial statements. That is due to timing. So Tammy and I talked earlier this month about potentially changing up what and how often we present financial statements to the board. So I'm looking at financial statements every month, but most of our programs are not actually billing the revenue sources till up to 45 days after quarter end. That's technically when all the billings are due. So by me presenting financial statements to the board every month, you're not seeing a true picture of how COIC is doing, because there's a few months where we're in the red and then we get caught up, but it doesn't happen necessarily perfectly with how our board meetings are aligned. So the idea came forward that maybe we only present those quarterly statements. So you could actually see revenue versus expenses. Are we in the black? Are we in the red? And they would be off of the quarter. So a great example is right now, we're billing for first quarter of 25-26. So those billings are due by November 15th. By all the programs. I'm not hitting the November meeting, but I would have that information ready for you for the December meeting. So it would be January through March. Those billings are due May 15th. You would see them June, April through June, due August 15th. You would see it September, July through September, due November 15th. You would see it December. And then October through December, due February 15th, you would see it in March. Now, I know that kind of puts our year end, because we're year end June. You're not seeing that until September. It kind of delays us, but that's probably the only time frame where it's going to be a little tough, because I'm going to have to work on deferred revenue and everything, but I think we can get there. So it really is up to the board.
You get a budget process in there too, where you're gonna see.
Yeah. I just throw it in there. We're getting caught up on audits, so we'll just have all this time. It really is up to the board, but that is really where you see the truest picture of what COIC looks like at a quarter end. If you're looking off of a quarter end, you're gonna see us in the red. Transportation is a perfect example of that. You're gonna see us in the red and could be freaking out, but really it's fine. We just haven't billed yet. Questions, comments, concerns? Or we don't have to change anything either.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Sounds very reasonable.
I think it sounds reasonable as well, and I don't think it's unique to this, but if there's a hard conversation that the board needs to be made aware of and participate in, then I would think that would be in place regardless of delayed financials based on maybe.
It's the no surprises.
Yeah.
And we've had those and we've brought those way before the board's even seen the financial statements.
Right.
And so I'll be able to see that coming and we'll have those conversations. That way we're prepared for that even before we get there.
So do I have any other questions? Cheryl or Seth? Okay, do I have a motion?
Good.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I was just saying, I agree with the quarterly. I think that sounds good. Are we on a fiscal year budget or annual calendar budget?
Fiscal.
Fiscal, so I guess this still makes sense regardless. Yeah, I'm good with it. Looks good.
So yeah, I'll make a motion to change the board reporting for financial items to, that's the actual language.
Yeah, you want to read it for me?
You need to read that, just so you're official.
So here we go.
I move.
I recommend the COIC that the COIC Board of Directors, the COIC Fiscal Department change from presenting school reports monthly to quarterly for the Board of Directors following the schedule referenced above.
Second.
I second it.
Second. Susan, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. So we are gonna go into executive session now for our last agenda item. We have a oral statement we have to read, and then we have to have that discussion, then we come back into open meeting again and have to pass one or two motions and then we'll be done. Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, COIC Board of Directors will now enter executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602I. This executive session is being held for the purpose of reviewing and evaluating the performance of our executive director. Only members of the COIC board, individuals invited by the board may remain in the meeting during the executive session. Representatives of the news media are permitted to attend, but are reminded that all matters in the executive session are confidential and may not be disclosed to the public. No final decisions or actions will be made in the executive session. Following the executive session, the board will return to open session for any discussion or action as appropriate.
Back, I just gotta.
So that concludes the executive session of the COIC Board of Directors. The board will now return to open session. And do I have a motion?
We invite the rest of the people back in.
I
I think
they've
they're
gone
gone.
home.
Yeah.
So,
Outside.
I think it's just a couple of our staff
I know.
members.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, okay, yeah.
Since.
So I'll make a motion to approve the performance review 25-26 interim goals as amended and the amendments to the employment agreement with Tammy Bainey, COIC's executive director, as recommended by the COIC executive committee, and authorize the board chair to sign the amended employment agreement.
second.
I'll second it. Tim did a good job reading.
That was
Good job.
nice.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay,
Great. Unanimously.
And thanks for what you do for Central Oregon.
yeah, let me just say, I love what I get to do. And and it really, the team that we have is exceptional. And so my goal is just to build the thing that helps them fly. So thanks for keeping me. I'm having a good time. Yeah,
You're doing a great job for COIC.
thanks. Thank you. I'll keep the junior minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
Those dang audits done.
With that, yeah, very good. With that, we're adjourned.
Yeah, that's our new four-letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready, going for raise argument.
Right.
Yeah.